Heaver. This half, you've started off with the Financial Times, the Bank of England lifting interest rates for the first time in a decade and also signalling more to come. Not such a great story for those with mortgages, but possibly good for those with savings, but not much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very marginal shift from 0.25% to 0.5%. But, you know, Mark Carney has hinted there's more to come. The real sort of reasoning behind this is because we have got very high inflation at 3%, which is really very high when you look at the last sort of few years, coupled with sluggish growth and sluggish wages. So prices are going up. People are really feeling the impact of that because their wages aren't going up by the same amount. You know, food's more expensive. So this is a bank trying to rein in inflation. But as you said, Jane, this is going to affect homeowners. I think lots of people will potentially be worried, well, maybe they can cope with the 0.25% percentage point increase, but what's to come afterwards? I think there'll still be a lot of people on fixed rate mortgages, and I think lots of people have been fixing in anticipation of this. But when those fixed rate mortgages come to an end, you could see more people being affected by this.
And the problem is that, you know, if you look generationally, there are those who had a mortgage 30 or 40 years ago who remember 15% and remember how huge it was. But there is a whole generation of people now who've got mortgages who've just seen exactly the same rate rise the whole time, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. I mean, very interesting as well in terms of the Bank of England and Brexit. They're talking about Brexit-related constraints. This is the Monetary Policy Committee. Of course, the Bank of England once warned May 2016 about a potential recession from a Leave vote, so we shouldn't take everything they say that seriously. But interestingly,
how did I know you'd get that in there?
The Monetary Policy Committee, they said something else very interesting today. They said that the labour market, as it tightens, we're going to see wage growth. We're going to see a difference in wage growth. And this is a real interesting aspect now of our economy moving forward. That if we have a government, once we're outside of the EU, that's actually controlling migration and lowering it, that could significantly contribute to starting to see wage growth, because you won't have that saturation in the unskilled labour market, anything like we've got it now, and you'll start seeing wages go up for the poorest. See those minimum wage jobs go up.
I think if you look at the figures, employment is actually already at a record high, and yet wage growth has been very sluggish. So I don't think the problem is that, you know, that there's just not enough jobs out there. We've got a record number of jobs in the economy. It's the sluggish wages that are the problem, and that isn't really linked to high levels of unemployment.
Let's quickly move on to The Guardian. This is a story that you've picked out, Sonia. GPs are turning to charity. There's also a cracking picture of an orangutan above it.
Unrelated.
But unrelated. And this is trainee GPs who aren't getting their salaries.
Yeah,
they're going to charity to actually survive.
Yeah, this is quite a shocking story. So I didn't actually know this, but there's apparently a large number of trainee GPs that have their responsibility for paying their wages. It's been outsourced to Capita, which is, you know, a big firm that deals with a lot of government contracts. And apparently what's happened, and the BMA estimates that hundreds of trainee GPs have been affected, is that Capita just haven't been paying some of these GPs for some reason. We don't seem to know what the issue is, but there's one trainee GP who's quoted in this piece who wasn't paid for 2 months, was really, really struggling, had to apply to a charitable fund for doctors in hardship, managed to get some money. But this really shouldn't be happening. You know, services tend to get outsourced because government says that these companies can do it better or more efficiently than it being done in-house by the NHS. But this is, you know, there are clearly real problems, and it's causing GPs very real hardship.
And there's a quote there from one doctor. She said that she'd had to get emergency funds to buy her daughter a 7th birthday present, and that in the past 24 hours, partners literally have stepped forward and have all taken a pay cut and given me a loan to get me through the month because they're worried about her family.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah,
it's the latest sort of horror story coming out of the NHS. I read a story earlier this week from the British Medical Association saying about some GPs considering going private now because their workloads are becoming bigger and bigger. They're having to deal with more and more patients. It's becoming a harder and harder job. You look at the NHS and you look at the population surge in this country. You know, the NHS story after
more to
story.
do with an ageing population.
Well, no. I mean, no, absolutely not. We're over 500,000 each year population growth. You're seeing huge pressure on GPs, and the NHS at the moment is buckling under the pressure, I'm afraid.
They need to pay them, don't they? Right, just quickly, last one to look at. May caught in web of fury at Spider-Man. It's back to our top story about Gavin Williamson, who is a fan of spiders.
Yeah, so I hadn't heard this one. Sonia actually informed me that this guy, this newly promoted Defence Secretary keeps a spider in his office.
A tarantula, no less.
A tarantula, yeah.
Scariest spider of all. And you know, we're not quite sure why, but it's been suggested that, it might be there to intimidate MPs. He sort of stopped by his desk. But
Any extra points for knowing what it's called? Cronus.
Cronus.
Greek god of time.
Maybe I'll buy a little tank or something.
Yeah, well, there it is. There's a lovely picture of it.
Ah, lovely.
I would like one of those on my desk.
Some ornaments in there, little soldiers.
Yeah,
and
they probably don't need any more wandering limbs in Westminster at the minute. Let's see what the weather's got in store.